We have returned, theoretically. We might be working. I don't know. Let's find out. Are we working? Are we working? Maybe slightly. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Yep, all right, we should be up and running. So this is a book that when I was much younger, I'm not all that much younger. It wasn't that long ago, was it? I was trying to see if I can find the copyright. First U.S. edition is 2003. I found some of these books when I was not that far from being young. I think I graduated high school 5 years before, so it wasn't like as a kid. But I thought the design idea behind these were amazing. And I sort of fell in love with this style of book. They've done other ones like it, piratology, Egyptology, mythology, alienology is one they maybe did. And then there were some companies that did knockoffs that were like goblins and things like that, where you could go through books like that. And frankly, I kind of love them all. Some of them did it better than others. And they're sort of meant for children's books. This is, I think this was like a $20. So the way this goes is, it's sort of like a scrapbook. So in the beginning, you have this envelope with a seal on it. You can open up and find a letter written to you. And then you have things like this little glued in piece. And like, I've always sort of loved, it's got runes written in there, like a secret message that you can decode if you learn the secrets in the book. And you know, the front page with the information going forward, descriptions and diagrams of the stages of life of a dragon, and their proportions to human beings, and just sort of breaking down nice maps, like fold out sections on maps that expand some more information. Like, I literally think this is an amazing concept of how to lay things out. Some inclusions, like a touch and feel dragon skin scale kind of thing. Again, another skin sample, supposedly. More skin samples. I think each one of the different types that they have in here has some skin samples or something like that. And they have the bone structure, muscle structure, finished look. I look at its head. I look at its skull. I mean, there's just a lot to really love about the layout of something like this, different phases of its development in eggs. And probably can't see the next one, right? I can't even get to the next one because it doesn't want to move. Okay, come on. There we go. So the artwork is fun and interesting, but I feel like overall, just the idea that each part you're using here is, detailing a little bit more information. Laying out some information, secrets, knowledge. And I always sort of thought it would be amazing to be able to create a book like this. The ability to sort of lay out the discovery and exploration of the topic that you're looking at in detail. And here's the thing. I feel like this would be an amazing format for laying out a setting for a game, a role-playing game, a computer game. Like, can you imagine a computer game that came with a book like this, that you pop open and you explore the implications of all the parts of it and what it enables you to learn about the game and the world? I do remember years ago a game that I never actually got to work on the computer. I think my family gave it to me as a gift, and unfortunately, it was not compatible with the computer I had. So I had this game that I couldn't quite play, but it came with a book with a story in it. And you read the story, and it tells you something about the setting. And I kind of loved that. The game I think was called Stone Keep. Never got the chance to play it. But the idea of taking a book like this and using it for world building. So in the case of a tabletop role-playing game especially, it works out for that design idea. For computer games, it's a little harder to make it work quite right, but not impossible. Because here's the thing. My favorite game when I was very young was a Nintendo Entertainment System game that it was one of those things that it was the first time I really hatched onto some really good marketing that was done for a game or a company. And it was Nintendo Power came out with a deal you could get where if you subscribed to Nintendo Power for a year or something like that, the magazine would arrive, and if you subscribed, you would get a copy of a game. A cartridge was sent to you. And the particular game that I got the copy of was Dragon Warrior. It was called Dragon Warrior. It's since then become better known as Dragon Quest, which is what it was released as in Japan. Whatever words they use for that in Japanese, it was called Dragon Quest. They had to change it to Dragon Warrior when it came to the US because there was already a game produced in the US called Dragon Quest. Not a computer game and not a console game. It was a board game, I believe. But they already had the name Dragon Quest. So for copyright reasons, when they brought Dragon Quest Nintendo game over to the US, they had to change it to Dragon Warrior. And I got a copy of Dragon Warrior 1. At the time, it was just called Dragon Warrior. They subsequently released Dragon Warrior 2 and 3 in the US. 4, I don't think ever was released in the US. Either 4 or 5. They may have released 4. I'm a little unsure about that. I got 1 and 3. I never had 2, I don't think. But the games, I spent so much of my summers playing those games. And here's the thing. Those games came with fold out like map style sheets and on one side of the sheet would be a picture of the world with the different locations on the map of the locations you have to go to, and little pop-out windows of what the location is. So like the Sears Tower or whatever would be on the map, and so there would be this little picture of the tower with this almost like a word bubble pointing to the location on the map of where that is. But on the reverse side of some of those, I'm trying to remember which one it was. Like the first one didn't have a listing of all those things. They came out with, the first one had a card for the different magic spells, and I feel like there were one or two other little items that came with it, the map and whatnot, and then a booklet that's sort of like the walkthrough of the game. And that booklet would have, you start in this town, and this town is where you can buy these items to help you upgrade your character for gameplay. And as you went further and further into the linear adventure, the path that you're going, you start as a kid in your hometown, and you gradually expand the ability to travel to other areas and explore further and further into the map. And the further you go, the more dangerous the monsters get as you travel. There are random encounters that you happen as you walk across land. And this style of game is exactly the style of game that the RPG Maker video game creating software is meant to emulate to a certain degree. It's similar to, I also had a copy of the first Final Fantasy game, which was, again, in that same style as the RPG Maker games can create. And some of that style was taken up by like the Pokemon games, where you have the character walking across the world map, finding a village. These are by what's the company? I think it's Candlewick Press from Cambridge, Mass. And they are I gotta see, like I actually might be able to pull up a reference here. They call them the Ologies series. And I gotta find out. So Dragonology, Egyptology, Wizardology is another one I got. I might even have Piratology. I don't know that I ever got Monsterology. I didn't get Mythology. They have Spyology, Oceanology, Vampirology, Alienology. They do have and they came out with some sort of sequels to some of them. So Dragonology, the complete book of dragons. And then they have like Working with Dragons, a course on Dragonology, Dragonology Handbook, a practical course on dragons, and Drake's Comprehensive Compendium of Dragonology. Egyptology, Wizardology, I do have that one, I believe. The Book of the Secret of Merlin, Wizardology Handbook, I might have gotten one of those too. A Guide to Wizards of the World, a Wizard's Code Writing Kit. Then they have Piratology, Mythology, Monsterology. Actually, I might have gotten a copy of Monsterology at one point. Spyology, I don't know if I got that one or not. Oceanology, I definitely didn't get. Didn't get Vampirology either. Alienology, I did not acquire. Illusionology, The Secret Science of Magic, Dinosaurology. Now these ones are marked in red, so I don't know if they must have released them. So Dinosaurology, A Search for a Lost World. Dungeonology was a Dungeons and Dragons, and I do think I saw one of those in the store at one point. Nightology, Ghostology. And so there's a whole series of them. And I think I have some of them that I haven't acquired in a wish list on Amazon that I may acquire at some point. But here's the thing. The thing I sort of love about them is they're sort of like a scrapbook, but it reminds me of the other half of where I was going with some of this was, well, I'll get there in a second. What I was looking at with the Dragon Warrior game is the guide to playthrough of that game. The first book is pretty good. It includes maps, locations, the story of your character's adventure as you go forward. But it also included teasers for the sequels that were coming out. And the sequels had these amazing rollout sheets. So one side was a map of the world with the different towers and dungeons that you would go into to solve a part of the quest, to ultimately lead you to confront the big bad guy at the end and win and save the world from their evil influence. So that was part of it. But flip that giant map over, and on the back side it's sort of like a collector's guide of all the things that you could find in the world. So one of them had at the top of it a set of roughly, I think, 70 different types of monsters that you will encounter at different parts of the world. And so it'd have a picture of the monster as it appeared on the screen. And in those days, a lot of that kind of thing was like they'd have a picture of a monster, then they'd change the monster's color, just give it a new skin, a new color scheme, and it would be another new monster. And underneath of that on the chart that you saw on the back was like the monster's maximum hit points, maximum experience points for defeating them, and the gold you got for defeating them, just sort of laid out as numbers underneath of them. And then that was for a lot of the main monsters, the regular monsters you encountered as you traveled across the world and through dungeons and encountered them in dungeons. And then off to the side were the 5 boss level monsters. So I think there were 4 of the boss monsters, and then the big master boss was sort of like that silhouette of a character with a question mark in the black. And that was the top of the chart. Now, underneath the chart are things like weapons. So from the very first bamboo stick that you use to beat little slime monsters on the dirt and grass, all the way up to the magical weapons that you acquire for achieving certain quests. And they chart out on those things a picture of the item, details of who could wield it, what its capabilities were, how much it costs you to get it if you were to buy it, and how much you could sell it for, what monsters might drop it as treasure, and some lore, some legends about the item. And each one had this on it. And then underneath of that was things like armor and magical potion ingredients and things like that you could go through this giant chart full of all the things you could find in all the lands and all the quests that you could travel in. And I thoroughly fell in love with these charted maps. And the thing is, like, these charts, they spell out things in them that are world building. They build worlds with the description of things. I'm trying to pull up an image of one right now. So we've got like the very first The very first section with the monsters is things like slime, metal slime, babbles, metal babbles, big slug, sea slug, healer, man of war, and they're just standard monsters. The drake, drakey, magidrakey, zombie, ghoul, hork. I don't know why they chose the word hork. Evil eye, dark eye, vampirus, magic vampirus, evil clown, mace master. I don't know why mace master was just the recolor of an evil clown. Why wasn't it like a sinister clown or something like that? Undead, mega knight, Harrigan's knight, and then you have the boss monsters. So Atlas, you have the image of Atlas, the name of Atlas, and the experience points, gold, and hit points or whatever. And then off to the side of that, they have very strong attack and defense powers. He can attack 2 successive times against 1 person. Spells have little effect on Atlas, so concentrate only on the use of your weapons. You should use weapons. The prince should use parry, occasionally using the defense spell increase to build up the defense power of his companions, and using the restore spell heal more for a companion's very low hit points. The princess should also use parry occasionally, using the restore spell heal all for a companion with the decreased hit points. So like it's a guide on how to potentially beat that character. And then like Malroth was the main villain, and we got no real data on him. He's just a question mark over a silhouetted figure, and it says the limits of Malroth's attack and defense powers are also unknown. He uses powerful weapons in combination with fire attack. Yeah, and so they're giving you a little detail about how these characters behave and interact in the world. But then we move off down to the bottom with the weapons, armor, and items chart. And so like the very first one on that chart is bamboo stick. It can be used by all 3 of the characters. So this must be for Dragon Warrior 2, because Dragon Warrior 1 was a single character. You didn't have a party, it was just you. Dragon Warrior 2, you were the main character, and you had a party that included the prince and princess of some different realms. And so each one of them had different abilities to wield certain things. Dragon Warrior 3 had you the ability to have characters come in and out of your party at certain locations. You can drop them off and get a new person into the party, and you could make new characters where you would make different characters of different classes: a merchant, a fool, a fighter, like a wizard. So you had different classes, and you could create new characters and give them names, and they would be a part of your party for as long as you wanted them to, and then you could drop them off and pick up a new member for your party. But in this one, we have the 3 characters could all use the bamboo stick. It can be found in defeating the magician. Another stick will appear. The princess of Moonbrick is equipped with this weapon. It is not real powerful, but it is better than no weapon at all. Then you move all the way down this chart to the different weapons, and you get things like the Sword of Erdrick, the Falcon Sword, the Wizard's Wand, the Staff of Thunder. So like the Staff of Thunder, if you defeat the evil clown, another staff may appear. So they might drop one, they might not. You can equip yourself with this weapon. When used as an item, it has the same effect as the Fireball spell. There's the Thunder Sword and the Sword of Destruction. And some of these, like, you will find, the Sword of Destruction says, you will find this in a treasure chest in the treasure chest of the Green Dragon, the Giant, and Atlas. So Atlas was one of the boss monsters that you could defeat, so he might drop that. No guarantee that he would, but you might find it in a chest dropped by him. This is the most awesome sword in the world. Using this sword may be very risky. The user of this sword brings upon himself a curse. There may be a way, ... And they leave it like that. Like there are bits in there that tell you, like, there may be a way to benefit from the power of this sword without having to deal with the curse. And so there are other things like that. There's in the armor section, there's magic armor is sold at weapon stores in certain towns. Even the Prince of Canuck can equip himself with this. So certain people who otherwise might not be able to wear armor can wear the magic armor. And some armor with like the armor of Erdrick, with this defense power, you will have nothing to fear in Roan. Now, there are some of these armors, I can't remember if it's in this game or in another game. Some of these armors actually heal you as you travel in them. But let's see, let's find some of the other, like the, what was it? The Gremlins Armor. The Gremlins Armor is hidden in the Gold Baboon's treasure chest. This armor offers the strongest defense power of all armor, but equipping yourself with it will cause you to be cursed. And there was a consequence to having that item equipped. But there were certain like named items, the helmet, the armor, the shield, the sword of Erdrick. These are legacy items of a famous hero. And then you have regular items, magical herbs for healing, antidote herbs, fairy water, dragon's bane, keys for unlocking certain things, the mysterious hat. Increase your defensive powers slightly by wearing this hat. But it did other things too. Then there were star crests and moon crests, and these were pieces that, when assembled, formed another item that gave you abilities that you didn't have before. And this is all just one big chart of all these different things that exist in the world that give you certain things. And then there's a list of this different spells that you could use. And like I fell in love with these games as a kid. And I especially love this sort of world building through a list of items that exist in the world. Dragon Warrior 3 Weapons, Armor, and Items it doesn't have the monsters at the top, and it doesn't have the spells on the side. It's just one big mass of different equipment that you can equip for different types of characters. And each of them has sort of legends to them, like telling you things about them. Okay, let's see. Magic armor. A light armor made of special material called Mystic Silver, also effective against the blaze type of spell. There's designer swimsuit was a costume you could wear as a character. An outrageously priced swimsuit for women. It is not known why anyone would want to buy this. And I think that one also played up on the joke that, like, this swimsuit provides more armor protection than some other sets of clothing. Iron mask. Cursed items. Yep, there's some of that too. I'm trying to remember if multi-edged sword. That one was an interesting one. One of the most powerful swords, but cursed. Its user may hurt themselves too due to its extraordinary lethal nature. So it's literally a very effective, powerfully damaging sword. You can kill way easier certain enemies with that sword than you could with other swords. But there was also the risk of you harming yourself with it. And it's just sort of like, there's some of that, but there's also things like this, what was it, the Sword of Oni? Sword of Gaia was a item you had to acquire at a certain point to continue forward. Or the Orochi sword, which is a sword that you got after defeating a certain villain. And it has a legend to it. And I just sort of loved that the world full of items is built up around sharing that chart. Like, you don't have to be playing the game to play with that chart, to pull it out and think about all the amazing magical items in the world that you're going to go get. And I loved that aspect of that game. And there's sort of like, it's one of the few games that had that idea of this accessory that you could play with outside of the game that gave you more details about the world that you were going to explore next time you played the game. And I feel like there's a part of me that deeply loves that kind of idea. And so books like the Dragonology book and some of its knockoffs, wow, it really freaked the camera out right there. There we go. So the books like the Dragonology book, they do a world building in a fashion of showing you bits and pieces of the world to help you learn more about the overall world without making it feel like they're teaching you about the world. And the final book that I wanted to talk about involving the inspiration for some of the things I want to try to do is Dinotopia. If you've never seen Dinotopia, this is like a Victorian explorer's guide to a lost land in which humans and dinosaurs live together in. Like, dinosaurs have become intelligent, like, what's the equivalent of something like that? Where almost like a wizard's familiar, where you can talk with them and explore concepts with them in a way that they're intelligent enough to understand. And so when you take something like a Dragonology book and you explore it slightly further with an idea of like a Dinotopia book, where it's the story of people, Dinotopia is a story of people who got shipwrecked in the Victorian times. They're shipwrecked and they wake up on an island that they couldn't otherwise get to. And as they explore inland on the island and try to figure out if there's a way to survive and then maybe get back home, they uncover the fact that this island is part of a lost continent of civilizations where humans who have shipwrecked over the centuries in that area have built up a civilization of human civilization intermixed with dinosaurs who have become sort of intelligent dinosaurs. And so you have this sort of partnership. It's trying to think of, there's got to be a movie or something that's equivalent to this, probably in science fiction, where people partner up with an alien or a creature. I mean, I guess Dragon Riders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey is a good example of that. But I'm trying to think if there's a movie. At any rate, what you've got in Dinotopia is, it started out as somebody illustrating like lost civilization illustrations. So basically going through ruins, like real architectural ruins in the world, and imagining if we rebuilt them into cities without like really saying like, okay, if we really say like scientifically we know this goes here, and instead just looking at it and letting their imagination help them build these Roman cities, these Mayan cities, and build up these civilizations that are no longer there. So it's almost like somebody said, okay, say we found Atlantis. What would it look like? what if we found Atlantis and it was the foundations of all the major civilizations in the world? So it's got little influences of South American populations, Rome, Greece, Babylon, um, China, India, Thailand, Japan. It's got all these little bits and pieces from those different major empires across the history of the world. And so they just decided to like, okay, imagine we found this land. Let's start drawing what it would look like to be on the city streets of these locations. What's it like to approach the main city of Rome? The equivalent of Rome. What would it be like to approach the walls? What would the city look like once you got inside? And then from there, they said, like, okay, so what if we just went whole hog and said there were living dinosaurs that walked amongst the people as friendly, peaceful dinosaur companions? Like, their parades they do during certain holidays, and those holidays have draped flower crowns and whatnot draped over the scales of a stegosaurus and things like that. And you just build out this entire idea of a city state like a Rome or a Athens, and you build them out with the idea that this is a civilization that's made up of a sort of symbiotic relationship between dinosaurs and humans. And it was such a fun book because it was these shipwrecked people, this father and two sons. I think, no, was it father and two sons, or was it a father and a son? I think it was a father and a son shipwrecked on Dinotopia, and they're discovering all the things about Dinotopia with illustrations and a narrative story of, like, we made it to the city on this day, and we found this was going on, and we met with this character, and we talked about these things. Sort of narration of, like, a traveler's journal of what they found, with some sort of architectural diagrams of things, and some design diagrams of devices they use to do things, and then some full-on, like, paintings of these events and characters and city streets with things happening on. So, like, you go into the market space and you see people riding on dinosaur back, towing a wagon, carrying their goods to market, like things like that. It was just like, it was so, I loved every inch of it. There's just an aspect of it that's so brilliant. And there's a part of me that looks at these three formats, the Dragonology, Dinotopia, and Dragon Warrior, and I feel like I want to make a game book where it's sort of like, it's like a board game, or in many cases, like the setting I've been writing in, designing my role-playing game stuff in, and potentially porting over to making some computer adventures for some of those games and writing stories in. That setting, I think I would love to illustrate that setting in a Dinotopia / Dragonology style book. So, like, you open it up and it's like a scrapbook full of little bits and pieces of useful information about what you're going to do, where you're going to be, who you're going to encounter as you travel. But with some of that Dinotopia exploration and narrative storytelling of uncovering the meaning and significance of certain things in the world. And I was just like, I kind of want to do, like, I want to make a setting book like that. And then from there, do supplementary books with more detail that would be more like the Dragon Warrior playthrough guide, because those are fun too, but they are definitely more about like how to play the game, whereas Dragonology is a little bit more about like, here's what we know about the world, I'm going to educate you on this. Whereas Dinotopia is a little bit more of like, we find ourselves in this amazing new world, and as we explored it further, we found this and saw this and met this person. And like, I feel like that would be my ideal setup for exploring the setting. Following that up with a little bit more of the playthrough kind of thing. But one of the other things this has gotten my head into the space of, and it's been percolating in my head for over a year, was some of the things about this sort of book are that like those, they're not quite, but they're very close to being a pop-up book. And I remember pop-up books from when I was a kid. One of my favorite pop-up books was a Halley's Comet pop-up book that I had. And it had a pop-up telescope. So you'd open the page and it would pop up the telescope, and you would look through an eyepiece that would look up the barrel of the telescope at a slide that you would put up and point at a window, and you could see the slides of pictures taken of this. It's like, I loved that book. I loved that book so much as a kid. But there's a part of me now that wonders, could I do a pop-up book that is a playable game? Or, you know, like the Dragonology book or the Dinotopia book, maybe you could do like a I don't want to call it like a shoots and ladders type game, but like follow that dot to dot path that takes you along a certain way, turn the page, do the next part of the path. Like you could totally do that. That's not quite where I want it to go. What I want it to be is like turning the pages in the book not only takes you to another interactive page full of features, but also progresses the narrative of the game that you're playing. And there's a part of me that wonders if there's a way to make a game book like that and try to figure out how to do that. But there's also a part of me that wonders, like, you may not have played a lot of old tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, but there used to be things that you'd get that were called modules. And these modules would be small, comic book sized, like not like 15 to 20 pages, but more like 7 to 12 pages, that had the setup, the main part of the adventure of the story, and the big boss that you fought at the end. So basically, like, your characters arrive in a town where they meet up at the local tavern, and everybody's very quiet and very suspicious of the new arrivers. And as you explore a little bit more and try to interact with them, they withdraw more. But you overhear a little bit of something going on, and you follow somebody out of the tavern that evening as they're, clearly up to something. And then you follow them and you uncover this thing that's happening. And it's the thing that you need to do to save the town from some nefarious stuff going on in the background. So you go into this dungeon and you fight the cult of the evil overlord, and you get to the end and you have the confrontation battle in the pits of this dungeon hidden off the side of the town, and defeat the villain who's sort of enslaved this town, and you become the heroes of the adventure. And that's literally what they were. They were literally single adventures that people could role play a game in. And there's part of me that wants to take that idea of those module style adventures and make plug and play adventures for a computer game. So use like RPG Maker, make a base game with modules that you can plug in and play as adventures. I would love to do that. I don't know how easily that can be done, but I'd love to give it a try. But also, there's a part of me that suspects it would be even more fun. Like, you can still occasionally get modules, or in many cases, books of adventures for Dungeons and Dragons and games like that. There's like Curse of Strahd is one of the best known adventures that you can buy for Dungeons and Dragons. It's a full book, and it has multiple adventures in it set in the realm of a Dracula setting. It's like Transylvania, but it's called Barovia, and there are werewolves and vampire hunters and vampires and curses and all those sorts of things. And you go on multiple adventures that carry you through the process of starting at a low level and working your way up to confronting the big evil master villain of the setting. And like, you can do short versions of those kind of things, individual adventures, encounters that are played in an evening. One-shot adventures is what they call them. There's also things called 5-room dungeons, where you build a dungeon that your characters get to, and then they travel and explore through the dungeon to confront the villain at the end of it and defeat it. You can get all sorts of these kinds of things. My mind goes instantly to, can I make a pop-up book that's a little bit Dragonology, a little bit Dinotopia, some degree of Dragon Warrior, but a pop-up book. So the rooms that you go into, you open a page and it pops out a whole room full of what the room looks like with the monsters in the room. Like, here's the treasure vault. Here's what you see when you enter the room. Just open the page and it pops out these features in 3 dimensions that you can look at. I kind of want to make D&D adventures that are pop-up books. Like, I think that would be an amazing idea. And the biggest hurdle to that, honestly, I think at this point is I could probably very quickly and very easily design some pop-up books to do very simple short adventures. I might even be able to design them specifically for my setting. The hurdle I foresee is these would be things for me and anybody I play with at a table, because I still can't figure out how one publishes a pop-up book these days. It's not like I can go on to Kindle publishing, because there's no such thing as an e-pop-up book. There's no, like, I know I can go on certain print-on-demand companies and they can print out books. Like, I believe, if I remember, well, I think Teespring was only able to publish ebooks. But there are other, like, you can publish through, I believe, Amazon will publish a print book if you set it up right. And I know Drive-Thru-RPG, if you do what you need to do it right, not only can I publish a PDF version of an adventure I made, but I can get a book printed, so you could order a print-on-demand book shipped to you for play at a tabletop. But those are all basic books. They don't have any of the glue-in features of a book like this. And they don't have any of the pop-up features. And, like, I haven't cracked the code. And I don't know if it's like a carefully guarded secret or what. But it's almost like nobody's talking about what it takes to get a pop-up book made. Now, this one, like, that's the thing is, like, if you were to buy, I'm trying to think. Like, if you were to buy the newest Dungeons and Dragons book that came out, like, literally this last couple days, I think, it's a $50 book. And, to a certain degree, rightly so. That book, as it's released, is likely to provide, like, if you get together with a group of friends to play a night of D&D, you're going to be playing probably 3 to 5 hours. You're probably going to be in the range of 3 hours most nights that you play. Now, a book like the one that just came out is probably 200 to 300 pages, but the material provided in that book is enough that you could end up playing once a week, 3 hours a night, once a week. That book will get play of years. If every week for one night you play 3 hours with a group of friends in that one book, that book will last you decades if you play it right. Now, you might get bored and just move on to something else at a certain point. That does happen, yeah. But you have enough material in that book for decades of play. So $50 is not a big outlay of money for something that's going to give you decades of playtime. And by the same token, the adventure booklets that you used to get, they're usually meant to be a one-off or a one-time adventure. So you're likely to get 3 or 4 hours of playtime out of it. And they were, like I said, comic book sized. And I feel like there's a nice little sweet spot middle ground. So, like, this book here is $20. And how many pages did it have? I don't think we have any page numbers on it. But it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, about 30 pages. So a 30-page book with some of those features. Now, a pop-up book might not have quite as many pages because there's more kind of layering on the pages, but I think this is a pretty good gauge of roughly what a pop-up book would be like. And so I could imagine being a little bit thicker than that, maybe going upwards of 50 pages. So about a sixth the size of the $50 book that just came out for D&D. But like this one's $20, and so if you could keep it roughly in that same time price mark, publishing a pop-up book that is an adventure that you can play in a role-playing game, I think you could probably get away with a $20 to $30 price mark on it. And if you make it flexible enough that people could reuse it multiple times in new ways, I don't know. There's just a part of me that loves the idea of a pop-up adventure book. I mean, it's possible I could just also do a choose your own adventure pop-up book, which would be fun to do too. That would be a lot of work, though. Like the choose your own adventure style books tend to be like you put in 130 pages, the reader who chooses the adventure path they take may only ever see like 15 to 20 of them, because their adventure path takes them through certain pages and not other ones. Other ones just get skipped over. Something to think about. It would be worth exploring. I think I could have a lot of fun with those kind of things. And this has been like percolating in my brain for a while of like, I really want to do pop-up Dungeons and Dragons adventure. And I kind of like, it also comes up every now and then when I'm thinking about like, what way do I want to lay out my setting? Like if I want to do my setting that I've been working on in a way that's system agnostic, meaning you could use Pathfinder, you could use Dungeons and Dragons, you could use Morkborg. There are like dozens of systems you could use. And so long as I don't use any game-specific terms or stat blocks, you could use my setting in any one of them. And so if I wanted to do a setting book that doesn't use those stats, then this sort of thing is probably part of it. And the Dinotopia would be like the other half of it. And I think that would be a fun way to lay out the setting that I've been working on. I still have to come up with a setting name. I've waffled back and forth. We started calling it the Empyrean Realm. Then I switched to Verloren. I was calling it Vestiges for a while, actually, when we started, right? Yeah. And then I thought for a little while that I liked the idea of Tier Lane and Moor Lane. I don't know what I want to call it yet. I feel like I'm going to one of these days find what it's supposed to be called, because it feels like it has an identity that I just haven't fully unwrapped yet. But we are approaching an hour tonight. I hope you don't mind. I know last time I was on here, Tuesday night, it was a short one. And I think, yeah, that was after I missed Sunday night because I was out giving a friend a birthday gift of homemade mead and playing some games. It was the first time I've been out of the house to play games with somebody I know. It's been a while. Sort of a mixed bag. Sort of sad. I have definitely forgotten how to socialize. We'll get there. Anyway, that is Thursday night this week. I will catch you on Sunday this coming week. Hope you're doing well. We're in that weird phase where the days are summer hot and the nights are fall cold. So I've got all the windows open right now to cool the house down from the hot day. And I will close everything up a little after sunrise to keep the cold in as long as I can keep it in overnight, over the daytime when the heat starts warming the house up. So hopefully your climate is a little more stable, and hopefully this summer isn't too brutal. Yeah, it's been about that here too, yeah. All right, I will catch you in a few days. But for now, take care, stay well, and have a good night. If you get the chance, check out these books online. Or your library might actually have them if your library is open. I don't know.